So, uh, our guest today is Jennifer Armstrong, founder and CEO of XpertSavers, a firm that helps community and regional banks grow deposits and modernize digital channels from strategy through execution. Jen's led large-scale programs at Citigroup, at Bankers Trust, and launched the Direct Bank at CIT, where disciplined execution delivered meaningful deposit growth and lower cost of funds. Today, she partners with $3 billion to $15 billion banks to decide when to launch a digital brand versus a digital branch, how to orchestrate the vendors, and how to measure progress in weeks, not quarters. Jen, thanks so much for making time today.
Thank you. Thanks
Uh,
for having it.
to start off, I'd love for you to give a quick overview of your career journey and of your company, Expert Savers, who you serve, what you help them do, and why it matters now.
Well, I think that my career journey has been long. I mean, 25 years in banking. If you count CIT, I guess we can make it 30. And I would say I had more traditional banking experience with Citibank and Bankers Trust. I worked on Wall Street for 12 years. I ran global custody, so I understood the movement of money. And then I guess when I went to Bankers Trust, that started my career in how do we change banks that are having trouble, right? And they had a lot of SEC issues. We fixed those over a 3-year period and sold the bank to Deutsche Bank. So I then returned back to Citibank because they were in the process of merging with Travelers. So um, half of my career, I would say, was on the Wall Street, and the other half was in consumer banking. Um, After Citibank, I guess in 2008, when the financial crisis really started, there were about 8,000 banks in the United States. At the time, there were banks like Goldman Sachs wanted to be a bank then because the SEC was really getting clobbered, and large investment banks were closing, right, and having problems. And at that time, I guess I left Citibank at the end of 2008, and a colleague of mine had asked us to come and help them build a bank or find a bank. And finally, they decided maybe they shouldn't be a bank. Years later, they opened Marcus, but at that point, they decided not to. And that's when we got a call to go to CIT and help them get out of bankruptcy. So that was in 2010. From 2010 until now, the whole flavor of banks has changed. All right. And I think it's not only banks, everything has moved to the internet. We have younger generations that only go on the internet. And we also had COVID, which forced everybody to be on the internet and not go out. So shopping has changed and banking has changed. CIT was really, I guess, my growing ground, or in terms of they wanted to buy a bank. After 2 weeks, we came back and we said, there's nothing to buy. Plus the fact you're not worth anything. So what are we supposed to do? And I was asked, can you build an internet bank?
Mm.
And I said, I can try to build an internet bank, but you have to do a couple of things. I said, well, first of all, we're not going to change the name. We're just going to call it CIT Bank. It has no recognition in the market anyway. We're not going to change the color. We're going to use the same color. We're going to use the same logo. And I need 2 really good contract lawyers to sit next to me, because that was what was going to take place here with how many contracts do we need to find the right technology. And we were going to outsource everything until we could build a back office and bring it back in. So that took all of my time, my first year, and we did launch the bank actually in 9 months. And the first year we had $3 billion, and we finished in 4 years with $15 billion. Okay. And that took them out of bankruptcy. We paid off all the brokered CDs, and then we bought a bank, and then they ended up selling all of CIT to a bank in North Carolina. But CIT Bank is still in existence today with many more products and bringing in deposits, even with a bank that has over 600 branches. Right?
Such a formative experience, though, building a bank in 9 months out of nowhere to grow it to be 15 billion in deposits. That's incredible.
It was a great experience, all right, but I got to meet a lot of the technology providers for community banks. There's a big three. There's a lot of them that have grown, more fintech kinds of companies. But these were the big three that cover most of the banks in the United States. And I won't say that they are leading edge technology. They're more followers than anything. The big banks have their own technology and their developers. They build the ideas and everybody else follows.
Right.
And that's pretty much how the market works. So that is how I met my partner. I was actually trying to hire his company to do some of the digital marketing, particularly display ads that he had done all over the globe for 20 years. It was called 24/7. And while I was still at CIT to get him to do that for us, I was trying to bring down the cost of marketing, actually. And at the end, when I said I was actually going to leave, he said, "Do you think we could do this for small banks across the country?" And I said, "We could, but," I said, "we'd have to think about, we have this experience with big banks and we have companies that work for us that are big global companies. Could we get them to do this for a small bank?" And we actually did. And that's how, um, we got our first bank, really, which was Rising Bank. But that's how we put it together. We just said, this is what we need to do in order to build out an internet bank. So it's a challenge and an opportunity for us when we started to look at what do small banks have and what could we offer them that they can't get and they don't know how to get it.
Right.
They-
When you compare about like JP Morgan, I think they're quoted as spending $18 billion, I think, is what this year is on their IT. That both maintenance and development, right? But I think it was 2 billion as the number I saw on AI specifically. There's no way that a community bank, even some of the larger regional banks, can spend at that level. So they're always going to be followers for some of these larger banks. And what you're describing is, the technology, how to bring it to market. You put the two of those together and offer it on as a package deal to these banks. You're bringing the expertise and the technology together.
the stakes of the market, as you might know that there's SoFi and there's different
Quantic.
companies out there that are taking away, I mean, even Amazon for that matter, they're
Mm.
taking away some of the banking pieces. Apple's taking away the banking pieces. There's the Apple credit card and so forth. So they're eating away at pieces of what the community bank actually does. So the community banks have to sit back and say, what is their need? And that's really what we go after. We go after the community banks that have a need for deposits. And most of them, if you look at them, they're very, very close to what's their ratio between their assets and their liabilities. And when it becomes 90 and above, then you know that the regulators are going to be knocking on your door and going, where is your reserve?
Right.
Right? And your reserve is out there someplace in a loan. And after 2008, that was a big deal for regulators. How much are the reserves? What do they have in the bank in case there's a run on any of these banks? So that's what we brought to the table, and that's how we came together to develop XpertSavers.
And it's just sticky deposits, right? We always, in the bank, we refer to it as consumer deposits are a lot stickier than commercial deposits. And it creates a smoother deposit flow overall for regional banks, especially when there's large commercial concentration.
Right. And most of the banks that you talk to, when you talk to a community bank, are not consumer banks. They don't want to be consumer banks. They're commercial banks. We're commercial real estate. We don't want to get into the consumer business. But the consumer business is what's going to prop you up and actually help you in your commercial business. And that's what they have to realize. But a lot of them don't. They figure, well, I have some branches, they'll bring in deposits, but a lot of deposits might even be commercial deposits. So they can have $2 million in the bank and that's their operating capital, but then they decide to buy a building and then they want to move some of that capital out in order to go and get that mortgage and so forth. And they don't get the mortgage from their bank because their bank might be too small or something. So That's what ends up happening, that they seem to poo-poo the consumer, but they love the commercial.
Yeah.
So
So specifically on deposits, the FDIC earlier this year said that community bank deposits were growing at double the rate of the industry overall. So it was 4.7 to 2.3. And the mix has shifted. There's a lot more interest seeking there for those deposits versus just your cost of funds hovered around 315 basis points. Have you seen banks, especially small community banks, adopting to this shift? Are they changing the way that they're adopting to these deposits?
they are shifting, but slowly, into the internet. A lot of them will still stay in their footprint, and they will start to adapt to go outside of their footprint. There are a lot of bigger regional banks like Webster Bank, and then they have an internet bank that lies under it. Nobody knows what it is, but you see it out on the internet. So I know that this one belongs to that bank, and I know which ones belong to the certain banks. But those are a certain level in terms of size and assets, and they know what those deposits will do for them. A community bank of, say, $10 billion sometimes does not realize that they need to go outside their footprint and get those deposits. And the deposits have grown in terms of fixed income. CDs are not a bad thing to have. All right. The fact is that you have your own CDs. You don't have brokered CDs. It's considered core, and that's important again to the regulators. And they have CDs that are going to roll over, and eventually, over time, the interest rates start to come down. So whatever you paid for that first CD in 5 years has paid for itself, and the marketing that goes towards it is totally decreased over time because you get a lot of renewals that never leave. All right. So you bring it in at 415 or whatever the going rate is, but you only need one product to do that. The rest of your products can stay neutral in the middle of the pack. Right.
Yeah.
And as soon as they buy one, they'll buy another.
Yeah, where do you see smaller banks getting burned today? You mentioned the AL mismatch. Is it there? Is it the promo rate CDs? Onboarding friction? Where are they really having difficulty in?
Well, the most of the banks that I first come in to speak to, their biggest challenge is that they haven't modernized. So there's two things that make them modern. They do not have slick websites,
Right.
right? And that makes you look modern.
I always say, do you pass the sniff test? Like, you say you're a premium bank, but then I look at your website and it's not.
Right, and it's 12 years old,
Yeah.
okay? And the basic thing that everybody needs, and that's why a lot of the big technology companies a couple of years ago, I'd say 5 years ago, went out and looked for all the best applications that they could buy that they could use for the internet. Because the internet, you can't have one of these applications that was once a loan application and now is a deposit application, because it asks you really stupid questions that have nothing to do with I want to open a CD. Do you live here? Do you rent? Do you buy? Those are the same questions that you ask in a branch. This is a non-documented application. Everything you ask is verified with platforms in back of the application. There is no paper. And the old applications that people say, oh, we'll take a picture of your license, right? That's like nobody knows how to do that. Move the license from, your file onto here. And once you start and getting into making it too complicated, it's like, I don't really need this CD. I think I'll just close my computer and leave. So you cannot capture that client fast enough, and you cannot close the deal. Right. And so those are the two biggest hurdles, that when you sit back and you talk to a bank and you say, your website needs to be modern. And they go, oh, well, I'm in the internet because I have online banking. I said, everybody has bill pay. That's not, something that no one else has. But when they come onto your website, if you're talking to a Gen X or a millennial, they want to see something slick and something that they can get information from. So a lot of what I find is these community banks rely on their websites to be pitch books, and they have pages and pages of, merchant services or real estate loans. And I'm like, it's too much. You would need to cut all this in half, make it short. And what they don't have, none of them have a call to action. Either open an account, talk to a person, and, request a call. I mean, they're very simple things that you can collect information from all of these people who are touching your website. And so once you drive them to a slick website with little information that they need to get more because they say, oh, this bank has this. How can I get in touch with somebody? You give them those call to action buttons that they can find out something or leave their name and their phone number. And then if we're going to push them to buy something online, you have a great application that gets done in 3 to 4 minutes, and it's finished and it's converted. All of the information that you have about that client goes onto a file, all right? And there's reasons why you might have rejected them. And there's reasons there that you can call them and say you could reject them because I couldn't verify really that address. They might have moved a few times, but you call them and then they send you something, and that's very few, maybe 10% of your applications that come in. And so out of the 10%, half of them you can close anyway. All right. And the ones that are bad, I just say don't even bother because we're going to have more that will come in. But when the regulators come in, you just say, what days do you want? What months do you want to look at? And you sit them down and you put them on the computer and you give them all the information of each file on the computer. And they can see why they were thrown out and what they didn't pass that was undocumented, which is much easier to operate in. So that changes the technology, not only on the front end, but totally on the back end.
And are you getting real-time account opening with these, or are they still doing manual back-end openings with?
No, it's all real time, all in one transaction.
Yeah.
One transaction.
Good.
Every day I can see how many impressions we had, how many times they click through, where did they click through, what they're buying the most of. The biggest product today is the 12-month CD. You can give them 9 months. We can make fancy 15 months and 18. 18 month is good. If you're going to renew on a 12, you might as well renew on an 18. They don't want to hear about it. They just want the 12. So, and then the big ones, the 6 month and the 12 months, those are the ones that are out there on bank rate and so forth. The ones that are off cycle are not out there. So on your website, you might have a couple of them thrown in. And if you throw a good rate at it, then you'll get people to buy it. And you don't have to be the highest in the market. That's what bankers don't know. If 4.20 is a good rate, but you've got renewals at 4 or 4.05, no one's going to shut their account and go to another bank and move the bank, wire transfer back to here. All right, because it's not going to go that way. We're not giving your money to a new bank because that could be fraud. It says you give your money back, not a problem. It goes back to the original bank it came from. Right. If they don't have that, then we do have to find out, is it going to a real account and so forth. Most of them have the original bank that it came from.
Right.
And it goes back that way. All right. So now it has to go back to your original bank. Now you have to go open it up over here and you got to move the money again. It says for 5 basis points, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, forget about it.
Right. Exactly.
Well, when going back to your story around the importance of websites and how it's just opaque at this point for many of the banks, I think one of the eye-opening parts when I was at a bank was we tracked traffic to the site for 2 months. And we looked at, of the traffic coming to the site, how many of them were logging into online banking and how many of them were looking at 1 or 2 pages and leaving. And it was almost half of our traffic were looking at the information pages. And because there was no initial CTA on the page to fill out a form or get more information, they were gone. And
Right.
the eyes in the room just like opened up so wide that they were like, oh, wait a minute. So there are people going to our site that aren't logging in? I was like, yeah, they're curious people. They're tire kickers that are coming and we're not capturing any of them.
I had a bank that used to call CDs and said it was compliance. They called it time CDs or time. I didn't even remember the name that they had. It was so old. but they were time savings accounts and not CDs. I go, why do you not call it as, because, well, that's what I go, wait a minute. Let me tell you
Call it what it is.
how many people look up timed savings accounts. I said on Google. I said, nobody does. Everybody looks for I mean, they had to go to compliance to change the title of their product. I said,
Yeah.
it's not in the market today.
Yeah.
All right. And they just didn't, I mean, they realized it, but I'm like, you're not getting anything because it's got a name that's not, known in the market.
Yeah. We had a similar problem. We had a trademark branded term for our telephone banking that we would use across all the material. But then everyone would be like, well, what is that? It's telephone banking. Well, let's just call it telephone banking. Like there's no differentiator for telephone banking now.
Right.
Just call it what it is. What does a great year look like for you? Is it deposits, cost of funds, efficiency ratio? What's the mandate that they should be operating towards?
Well, what I usually say is I'd like to do a discovery with them. What is it that you want? Do you need deposits? Do you need more customers? Do you want customers outside of your footprint? A lot of them don't want to go outside their footprint. And if you do want customers outside your footprint, will you be able to service them? Usually, I tell the banks because of fraud, you need to start with savings accounts, savings and CDs. It's the safest thing. They can't move the money. You can see it and so forth. And then you branch out and say, okay, now I'm going to go into checking because I'd like to have a second account to them and they have the savings account. So why don't you open a checking account and they're going to have to move money back and forth to that checking account. But if they are a bank that's in the middle of, I don't know, Virginia, and they now have a client in the middle of Iowa, all right, you need to give them a debit card so that they can get their money, right?
Right.
Oh, we don't send cards out in the mail and so forth. So that becomes the issue, all right? But they're not really, there are opportunities, but when I first deal with a bank, it's very important that the CEO and the CFO and the CTO have come together to say, we need to move into the 21st century. And we want to move in a way that we can be both in our branches and outside our branch footprint in order to bring in deposits and new customers. And they are going to be your consumer customers. And if you want to branch out past your footprint for business customers, you can do that, but you're going to want to have somebody in those areas to be able to go and kick the tires and so forth. So they don't really branch out much in business banking as much, but they can branch out with the consumer. And a lot of consumers have small businesses. That's what they have to recognize. They're not really opening a business account. They're opening a savings and a checking account. They use QuickBooks to bring money into the bank, into their accounts and so forth. But there is small scale. But I have some banks who don't even want to use Zelle. All right. And so I'm like, right. But you don't get the client that wants to open a small business account if you don't have Zelle. I mean, because that's just your salon or your landscaper or anybody who just sends an invoice and like, oh, I'll pay you with Zelle, you know? So I think that's an issue. And sometimes what ends up happening with these smaller banks is you have um, a disagreement and they're not all on the same page about some want to move into the internet space and others just want to do branch banking. Okay. And you can really tell when some of the managers are saying, okay, been moved over to the internet side and I'm listening to how they're talking and what they're working on. And after the meeting, I might say, did he come from the branches? and and you can figure it out because they're very reluctant to move into the space and not have this control. You actually have more control over your customers and what you want them to see and what you want to sell them.
You mentioned small business banking. I think a lot of fintechs and traditional banks have tried to do digital small business banking. So think of the same branchless digital banks for consumers, but do it for small businesses. And it seems like a few of them have opened. Maybe they get some deposits, but they really can't figure it out. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that there are not a lot of business banking applications. Okay, and that's really the biggest thing. All right, because if you had a good business, and some have it now, all right, I mean, not the banks as much as there are business banking applications that are out there, that once you get a business application, you can send that to the new customer and so forth, and they can start to fill out these things and think about what they need to do. And there's two types of business clients, right? There could be what you can a small corporate client, and then there's a regular business client, like I said, a small mom and pop store. They only need a couple of things. They need a credit card, they need to have some technology to the credit card or the machine, and they need a checking account and so forth. And that's what they need. And so the needs are not as great. And they can do that through the internet, but they do then end up to have to again turn them on to their new credit card, turn them on to the processing of that credit card, and help them connect to the bank. But the biggest thing is really having the right application. And it's taken the banking many years to have just the consumer application, and now they're just getting into the business application. But the thing about these applications that are in the internet, whether it's consumer or banking, can play a very big role in how you structure your branch, your staff, and how you work with them. So it's still a it is still a relationship driven piece out of the branch, but you get it done much faster because you're not sitting there. You can take someone off the platform to open a checking account and say, "Why don't you sit here and have a cup of coffee? Here's your iPad. Open up your checking account." And you can give us the check and we'll open the account for you right away. Or just open it from your other bank and move everything. I'll go over anything for you. Let them do it themselves. The younger generation doesn't really even want to come into the branch, but if they did and you gave them an iPad, they'd be perfectly happy because they don't want to sit and talk to you, number one. I personally, when anyone tells me to sit down, they go, "Okay, how do you write your name? Is it two N's or two F's?" And I'm just like, "Why don't you just let me do it? Because I'm going to write my name faster than you can." And I think they have to really redesign how their branch is going to work. I mean, that's the biggest thing. If I can redesign some of that, you should be able to save FTE and make it more technical.
Well, and not only that, but save on the overall square footage of the branch as well. You don't need a 10,000 square foot branch anymore. Those are so old school. You can now implement a typical, low kind of just basic service branch with 1,000, 1,500 square feet in a strip
Yeah.
mall.
And it would be high touch and so forth. I can remember when I first started working for a Citibank, I could not understand that I would stand online and I'd want to get, I don't know, what is my checking account? How much money is in my checking account? And I'd stand there and then they tell me to go to the red phone on the wall. And I'd go, "What?" And that's when I was working for them, I was like, "We need a service center. We need a service desk." Okay, having people stand online for 10 minutes only to be told to go someplace else and talk to somebody in St. Louis is ridiculous. Okay. So let the service desk do some of those things and let the service desk, be able to tell people you can get a lot of things out of the ATM or the red phone. So, or put the red phones at the service desk so that if there's any questions. So we actually started a service desk in at Citibank in Brooklyn. We started in Brooklyn. They must have given us like the worst branch in the world, right? But it worked and it sort of offloaded because you really didn't have everything that you needed. But back then, the technology wasn't there because now it's instantaneous. You say you pay $1,000 to go, okay, this is what your balance is. Back then, it was like overnight batches and so forth, and you wouldn't really know your balance until tomorrow. So it was quite interesting, just the back end has changed dramatically, but now it has to change dramatically again.
So, and all of the feedback that they get along the way that, hey, your order's being packaged, hey, your order's on the way, hey, your order should be there today. Like all of the step points that reduce the overall stress and doubt that people can get, especially you don't know if it's an important package or not, and people want to know where it is. So
Right.
now when it comes to money, which again is probably one of the most important things that consumers have, not knowing where things are sitting and where it's processing and what's my balance today and having that be near real time is a challenge. And now we're shifting, we're accelerating even further with AI, and people are getting instantaneous access. I don't need to read 10 articles to figure out what I need. I just ask AI, it goes and does it for me and it gives me the answer that I'm looking for.
Right.
Like now consumer expectations are even more immediate than before.
And now the banks have that technology. They have they have the mobile apps. They have the mobility that you can see what is my balance on my credit card? What is the balance in my checking account? They can pay with Zelle. So everything is right there. I mean, I think I once went to the hair salon and I left my phone someplace and I was just thank God I knew them. And I was like, oh my God, I can't pay. I don't have any money because I don't carry any money and I left my phone someplace. They were like, just go home when you find your phone, just Zelle us the money. I mean, they know I always pay with Zelle. And that was the first time I ever thought, I can't lose my phone, and so forth. But it's instantaneous. And I do say that to CEOs that are thinking about going this way, because there's two ways to go. You can build another brand like a lot of banks have done. Even small banks have built brands. One of our first banks was NBC Bank out in St. Louis, and they built Rising Bank, and they knew exactly what they wanted. But you know what? That bank grew. I think the president, I think we did a PR on him, and it was picked up, excuse me, by American Banker. And he became like the rock star of digital banking for small banks. His bank wasn't even $2 billion, but he wanted those deposits. And he clearly said, I want 50% in savings and 50% in CDs. He had a very clear point of where he was going. And he told the staff, this is what we're doing. I've worked with other banks where we start to get around the table and you have the naysayers, oh, this won't work and we can't get sale up and they use several different technology providers. So something might come from FIS versus Jack Henry, and it's all intertwined, except the core is the core. And then you still have to get everything into the core. So now the big providers are doing a lot of APIs that you can use fintech, but the banks aren't there yet using all of what's available to them.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about the different aspects of business transformation. You mentioned earlier the importance of having that alignment at the executive level before you even start the journey down the digital banking path. Even from your days at CIT and launching the digital bank, what have you seen almost work, and what did you stop doing to go faster when you were developing these?
Well, I think, we were really, whatever was at our fingertips in terms of for CIT, we were building, right? And we used Jack Henry, and they were a great partner. And they really didn't ever have a digital bank before, but they put their all into it. And I think between CIT, it was a good partnership. And they built a call center for us because they didn't really have a call center, and neither did CIT, but they were going to use it for after hours for other banks. So once they built the call center, other banks were using it after hours. So then banks could have 24-hour call centers without really having any FTE in the branches. They were very, very good. But they had technology that wasn't good. And one of them was the application which we used from another vendor. And I would tell Jack Henry, can you please buy this? Just buy them so we could change it. I think the first year we spent a lot of money to get that $3 billion. Now, if you're getting $3 billion and you send $15 million in marketing, I mean, it's still a good ROI, right? But the point is I could have spent a lot less money in marketing dollars if I really had a good application, because the put through of that application was like 17%. Today we use applications that have conversion rates of 70 to 80%.
Yeah.
And that's a major difference right there. And that gives you the feel of Amazon. Okay. I go in, I have 3 short pages. They don't ask me for my firstborn child, and I'm done. So when you're first talking to a bank and they want to do this and you say, you really should redo your website. Well, they're like, well, how much is that going to cost? And that could cost like $200,000. Now, some banks don't want to do that. So we have banks that we have built 5 pages that are optimized. Now, a lot of them have websites that are not optimized because they're not optimized to use digital marketing. So when you say, well, we have to optimize it, and then you try to put these great 5 pages in the middle of this mess, and you're like, okay, we're going to do it, but all of our advertising and our digital of what they click on have got to go to those 5 pages. And it's sometimes hard to separate out what they're trying to sell in branch versus out of the branch. But we do have different rate charts that are this is in branch, this is out of branch. It's like, you want this higher rate? Go home and do it. That's where you're going to get it's in the internet only. And I said that banks are at the beginning were afraid to do that. They're like, oh, I can't tell our customer it's internet only. I go, do you shop at Macy's and Saks online? Everything is internet only. All right. This is in the store, and these 12 things are internet only. I mean, it says right there on the merchandise. I said, this is the way life is now. It's only on the internet.
How do you manage? One of the arguments I heard specifically against that was we don't want our commercial clients calling in and saying you're giving 50 basis points more for an internet account versus the one that we already have. We're long-term clients. How can that be?
Well, a lot of them don't see it because I will say that when we advertise like that and we're going on the same website, we do not advertise for the internet in their branch, on their branch footprint. We're outside their branch footprint. And what they do in their branches is their issue. The other part is those accounts are only up to maybe 200,000 or 250, even if they're joint accounts. They're not taking $5 million in on one account. I think the commercial clients know that they bring more money and it's operating funds that they have. So they'll get a decent rate. And I know a lot of banks that have really good relationships with certain customers, and if they say, I have $3 million I want to place, they will give them better rates
Yes.
than those that are being advertised. So that again comes from the relationship that they can control, right? And we're out there pushing in the consumers that are at a footprint.
So let's shift to talk a bit about XpertSavers. Who is your ideal client right now? What are you actively looking to acquire as new clients you want to serve?
Well, we still want to serve the community banks, and usually I say 3 billion because some of the banks that are like 1 billion and so forth, a lot of them are private owners, and they're just, they take in money, they borrow money, and people borrow money, and they have nice little banks that operate just fine. And they're not going to go outside their footprint. So the sweet spot is really between 3 billion and 15 billion, maybe you go to 20. And it's right in there. And you really want to get to the newer CEOs that are coming in that see that you need to be on the internet and that you need to have products that work for people on mobile and that they just don't want to come into the branch. Let's face it, they don't want to come into the branch. And then there are some who have their normal checking account over here and their debit card, and it's around their branch so that they can run in and get money and so forth. And they want to really put their savings account someplace else. And a lot of people, you probably see why the CDs and the fixed income products have gone up is because the stock market has been so erratic. I mean, those who are in the stock market and understand it don't buy and sell. They're going to ride it out, or they have enough money someplace that I don't need to sell this and so forth. Now, because of inflation, a lot of people have had to use those savings. So they're not so far in the market and they're using some of their savings or some of their 401ks. And when the market goes up and down, they really want stability. So with stability comes trying to get the best rate that they can on the internet, and that's why money is moving into those fixed income products.
Yeah.
That's really where it's going.
So in looking at those 3 to 15 or $20 billion banks, is the expert savers, are you coming in strictly as an advisory type of level, or are you doing some execution? Do you do embedded squads? Like, how does that work?
Yes, we do three things, and a lot of people call us and go, "We want you to do our marketing," and I have to say to them, we're not a marketing company. We really are bankers that put you into the internet. All right. And so when we first meet them and they ask all these questions, we usually say to them, the best thing for us to do and where we like to start is, what do you need? What's your asset ratio to your liabilities? And where are you going? Okay. Are you growing? Is your loan portfolio growing? Do you want to grow? And the biggest thing is that they have a lot of brokered CDs that they just want to pay down. Okay. So then we say to them, all right, we need to do a discovery. And the most important thing is the end-to-end processing, the customer experience from the minute they hit your website to the minute they open an account. So it's that end-to-end process that we will go through. And we can analyze their website in a matter of a couple of hours. We can come back and tell them you're not ADA compliant. That's the biggest thing. Most of them haven't looked at their websites in forever. Nothing looks modern on this thing, right? When was the last time? And they panic. Like, I don't want to change it. They don't even know what CMS system that they're on. And a lot of them might belong to the big technology guys, okay? It might be an FIS website or something where they can change the banner, from blue to red, but they can't do anything else to it. So what we suggest to them is, we'll build you a website, we will put it in the cloud for you, and you will own your website. So whatever you're going to pay now to do it, the changes that you have to make, you'll either learn to make yourself or we'll make them for you even when we leave. It's a minimal charge every month, and we'll take care of your rate changes and so forth. But now it belongs to you, and you can update it, and you can keep it updated on the different versions depending upon what CMS system. Some banks are on a CMS system that they haven't updated in 12 years,
Right.
And now they're outdated. So we build that website for you, and we tell them that we'll build the website, it will be compliant, it will be work in the regulatory worlds of banking, and we give them suggestions about what to use as an internet application. I don't sell technology. I can give you a suggestion. You need to go out and meet these, providers, do your own RFPs and so forth. If you need help, I can find you people to help you do RFPs, but that's not what we do. So I'm agnostic. Most of the time I get called by banks saying, we just bought this new application. I go, oh, that's good. It's a great application. How are you going to use it? I don't know. We're going to use it. Or they put it in, and then they call me and they go, well, we're not getting any conversions. Well, that's because we're not having the right marketing, or you don't have the right website. So again, we do that discovery, and we lay the plan out. And sometimes, I had a bank that had 3 brands, 25 branches and 2 internet brands. They came to me and they said, can you help us get a new online system? Now, the CEO I knew from Citibank. We had been friends for a very long time. I said, I'm going to come in and I'll sit there for 2 weeks and tell you what I think. So I walked in and I go, we're starting at the back of the cart instead of the front of the house here. I said, you have 3 websites that need to be totally changed. I'm sorry to say. And then you need one. I said, one good application. You have 3 applications from 3 different vendors that all are awful. Okay. And then you want a new online system. So if you put it all together with these 3 brands, we must have had 14 different platforms, and we really went to 3. they had one something in their branches, and I said, how many internet applications have you opened in this past year? And I think it was like two. And I said, oh, you just paid $100,000 for two applications. So that's the kind of thing that you had to sit back and do this analysis for them with their staff. And he had to spend about $1.5 million to do this whole thing. And he goes, I got to get it passed by the board and everything else. This was like a 6 or 7 month project just on that part. I said, but in the long run, this will be worth it for you. This will be worth it. And he was ahead of his time. He had an internet bank long before anybody else did. And he had a $500 million in it, a good amount of money that was backing him up. And he did. He took the plunge and he did it. We happened to open, it was like, we're putting out the project plan. And I don't know how we picked March 18th of 2020, but we said, okay, the branches are going to go live on March 18th, 2020. And on that Monday, they closed New York State down and everything had to be on the internet. So he went from having like 1% of accounts being opened online to 23% of his accounts were opened online because nobody could go to a branch. And I said, boy, that was the luck of the Irish, you know. And they've got a good marketing digital marketer that runs that and so forth. It's very important hire that they know what they're doing. So I think the difference of expert savers is we don't just sell you pieces. The technology people sell you pieces. Somebody sold these banks this great application. Nobody told them how to use it. I mean, how to use it for the customer to get to it. But we tell you how it should run and look like. That's your discovery. If you want to do it, we will help you implement it. If they have a PMO office, we work with your PMO office. If you don't, we become your PMO office. And every week, everyone who has a stake in this has to meet with us. I mean, that's it. We're part of the bank now. So we stand shoulder to shoulder and we don't stop until we get it done. All right. A lot of people sell you something and they go, okay, here it is. And we hooked it up and lots of luck. And then you're calling them, you're calling that provider all the time. Well, it's not really working and this doesn't work. We work it. And then a lot of them ask us to market it. And they ask me, how do you always reach your goals? We reach our goals because we know that we have just built the pipeline that absolutely works in the digital space. So I can confidently say to somebody, need to give us $1 million. And some, CEOs will just like $1 million. I said, but you told me you wanted close 900 and something million dollars of deposits. I want $1 million, not for me, for marketing.
Yeah.
Okay. And we don't spend that much, but we did for one bank. We spent under $1 million and we got them $956 million in 1 year. And we stand by that. I used to say it was for every dollar, you'll get $100. Now it's pretty much for every dollar, we can get you somewhere between $600 and $1,000 of deposits for every dollar that we spend. We know where to place the ads. We know how to do it. And we know how to place the right product at the right price, right? So when you're looking at everything that's out there, I say, look, you don't have to be the high. We usually tell them when we start, you got to be in the top 3 or the top 4. And you don't have to have 6 products there. You need to have 1 or 2. The other ones can be in the average ranges. All right. But the one that you want, and when one of our presidents said, I want 50% savings and 50% CDs. All right. We took the 12-month CD and we took we had a higher rate in the HISA. A lot of banks will tell them, well, why don't we put a checking account now and a savings together and will last for a minimum of $5,000. But if any of them go down below 5, like if you always have 5 in the savings and you only have 2 in your checking, that's okay. But if any of them if the total goes down, then they drop down to a low rate.
Mm.
Okay. So if you know that if a customer, has an average of $2,000 of expenses a month, and you tell them you want $5,000 minimum, then you're always going to have they're always going to have 7 there, but they're going to use 2 for transactions. But then these banks have a core that can't track that. I go, okay, how old is the core? What version are you on? And you go through things like that. But there's some fancy, small little things that you can do that help you keep the deposits in the bank, and you don't have to stay at those high rates all the time if they drop below minimums.
I've read actually that there's a lot of going back to that AI topic of using rate personalization with some of the banks, that they're testing using even micro segment pricing based on inflows and outflows within the bank and likelihood of transferring the money out. Have you seen anything around that or any banks that are trying that?
We haven't seen, no. I would say that these banks are not even in the internet, so I haven't seen them using any AI yet, to be honest with you. We have just developed a new platform that we're going to use because we have weekly meetings with our banks that we tell them where we spent the money, how much money, what we spent it on. Every week we have a meeting with the bank that says, here's how we did last week. All right. The 12-month did great. The 18-month didn't do this. But this is where the rates are in the market. All right. And where you stand, your rate is at 12. The rate here is 1. This rate's 1. All right. If you don't really want anything in this bucket, then leave it there. But if it's 5 bips to get to the 6th place, then you put the 5 bips in and the rest of it we can leave at a certain level, right? And that's the difference because we understand banking and we understand the cost of funds and where they want to be. But so we've developed a platform which we call Gleam, which is not out in the market yet. We're going to use it with some of our customers that will do everything that we do on a weekly basis on an automated basis. So every place where we get our information from and the core and from Google and so forth, we will be plugged into. And everything that we put out, it can put out all of this automated. How much you spent, how many hits you got, and so forth. So it does the funnel for you and it does all of the data-driven AI that you're thinking about. It's not the machine learning side yet, all right? It's only, here's all the data and it can be comprised and this is what you're doing, but it can personalize. So it does have the AI now that says we're selling this and over here, so we should be able to personalize this one to the customer, even with emails and so forth. But think of new products to come out to personalize for them because this is what they're buying.
So it's like a management dashboard. You're aggregating this information from the different sources. So ad platforms, core, performance, budget into a management and decision dashboard, really.
Right. And even we'll be able to scrape what's out in marketplace because of the AI. We can scrape what's on some of these deposit websites, and the aggregators are great to go after. Okay, here's the rates that are out there. I mean, nobody knows the State Bank of Indiana or so forth, but they've got a rate out there. So we're just looking at the rate. But a lot of people, are going, I don't want to go all the way out there or to that bank. So I'm going to stay around my local bank. They look at the bank, they look at how long it's been in business. I mean, they're savvy buyers, but they're not, they're not going into any branch, I can tell you that. So we're really looking forward to Gleam. After we build it, and if we market for you for 2 years, you should be able to do this yourself, right? A lot of them just can't seem to get to that space that easy.
Hand holding.
But at a certain point, but with Gleam, they should be able to do it themselves because we're going to leave them with that they can license from us, and then they can do all of the data collection that they need in order to run their digital marketing. And, and hire either a lot of times we're out here doing our own marketing and they still have a marketing company of record. And the issue with the marketing company of record is that they're used to marketing in branches. Then they say, oh, they do all our commercial stuff. And I go, what's that? What is your commercial stuff really? Do you go to
The
you
events.
have dinners and and events and donuts and then coffee? We don't do any of that. And I know that most marketing companies, I haven't met one marketing company that can really build a website.
Yeah.
And I try to tell the banks that. I go, it's not that I want to go against your marketing company, but your marketing company has to go out now and hire technology people to build this. All right. And then they have to go get a content writer to build this. If they have content writers and so forth, I'll use their content writers, but we know the technology that has to happen.
And the
Make it
compliance factors that need to be within the bank.
and the
The regulators
compliance
are
factors and so forth. And we don't have a lot of speed bumps. I mean, we put together some beautiful websites and it makes the bank look like they know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's some of those aspects. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that consumers are used to high-end merchandising, even on just simple stores. Like if you look at some Shopify stores, these are just small people that are running a business, an e-commerce business out of their garage, but the rendering of their business and what it makes you feel and think about their brand, because the platform, either Shopify or WooCommerce, are able to provide, it gives a different impression of what you're actually buying and the type of product that's there.
Does.
If you can bring that same level of experience and just create the cohesiveness of not jumping around between different sections of the site and it looks completely different, or just even the intuitiveness of the design, it makes a big impact. Like mobile responsiveness is a huge thing for bank websites.
They want to repaint the branch and they want to do all of these things and they buy getting a bigger branch and so forth. And I know that you know this, but many times I have to tell them that $1 million of marketing spend you would eat up in 5 minutes if you had to build a branch, put 5 people in it, and have this fixed cost. That what's the average branch around the country has about $50 million. That's it. I went to a bank the other day and we were talking about this, and we were just finishing out our annual review that we had with them, and now they have close to $1 billion in the internet channel. I said, which out of your branches? I said, it could be your executive branch where the executives are. I said, which one of your branches has $1 billion in it? They all look at each other and they're like, none of them. I said, in 12 months, this internet branch has $1 billion in it.
I bet you they never thought about it that way.
No, they never did. They never did. So that really is the culmination of how do you get the CEOs to want to go in that direction?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably my biggest hurdle because they call you up and they want to do it, but I would say the sales cycle's really long. They think about it. I've had people call me and go, I'm the new digital manager. I want to do this. And we have a talk. He goes, it was great talking to you. But the guy in the branches doesn't want anything part of it. And I'm like, you need to have your own political fiefdoms and deal with them. I said, but the man or woman who run that branch at the CEO level has got to have the heart to say, this is the direction I want to go.
Well, it's a combination between the branch leadership and then the risk and fraud team as well. Those were the other pushbacks that we got.
Well, I think that when we talk about FTE and so forth, they say, how much FTE do we need? And if we're doing their marketing and so forth, you don't really need to add much to the back. You might need to add somebody if you're going to keep your call center open and go to if you're on the East Coast and go to the West Coast. You don't have to always be open on weekends. You could be open for a few hours and so forth. The biggest thing I said, you need to hire fraud managers that know what they're doing.
Yeah. Digital fraud is very different than transactional fraud in a branch.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the biggest FTE that you need to think about hiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they kind of look at you a little like, really? That's what you didn't tell me? That's all you have to hire is that? Because many times I've even said to marketing managers who are, might have called us to start this process and now we're doing their marketing. I would say, listen, guys, don't feel bad. I don't really care what color you make the digital display. I really care about what the treasurer needs. I said, because he's driving this car. I said, and he's the one working about how much do I need to cover all of the assets that we think that are here or coming due. And I said, we can take any digital display and get people to turn something up. I said, doesn't matter what color it is. It has to matter what it says and that all the compliance is on. Now, some of these banks want 4,000 lines of compliance. And I'm like, we don't have a back page to this thing.
You get an asterisk at the bottom of the display. That's basically it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is, you have to jump a lot of hurdles to get it all working. But once they see it working, they're so excited, which is good because they, you tell them you got to give it a few weeks to maturate here and for the algorithms to kick in. And one CEO called me and it was like after 3 weeks, she goes, I'm not a patient person. I'm not seeing. I go, you have to be more patient than 3 weeks.
That's such a bank CEO thing to say. I'm not patient. I need I need results now. Yeah.
I know. But
Well, we've talked a lot about what's working for bank clients. Just to switch gears on Expert Savers on its own, what does your growth path look like? What do you want to achieve within the business? What are you looking for as a great year for you?
Well, as a great year for us is we want to get more clients faster. All right. So we're making a big push on sales and marketing,
Mm.
and getting out there. Probably now to get to more conferences and meet more of these banks that they know what we can do and why we're different than letting some of the big tech companies do these things for them. Because I know tech companies can give me, oh, there's a bank here that needs marketing. All right. But as soon as I say they need to change their website, I'm taking food off of their table.
Yeah.
All right. And that's an issue. And I think banks have to wake up and go, you don't need your core to give you every single thing in your life. All right. There are things that are out there that can make you operate better unless the cores catch up to some of these things. So I do want to expand that. And I'm really looking forward to having the Gleam in our process because that will take away FTE that we keep on that just do all this manual aggregation that comes off of Google. And yes, Google has Google Looker, but it doesn't take in Meta and some of the other things, Facebook. So you have to look at everything across what you do. And we bring it all in and it's there. But now that it's automated, that will make life a lot easier for us to explain to banks exactly what's going on. And hopefully that they can do some of this themselves because they have a lot of data and they don't have data analytics in these small banks. They ask for reports and they get reports, but now we can take information from their reports and they can slice it and dice it any way they want because here's what I spent and here's what we're getting. And we can leave that. And that's a big thing for our company in terms of having a piece of technology because anybody can do what we do, but they don't want to do it because they don't want to take the time to do this. They don't want to stand shoulder to shoulder. They just want to sell something. I don't want to just sell Gleam. I want to put it into a process. And then I do want to leave with Gleam there as a licensed platform.
And what you're describing, I always say that there's a big difference between data and information. And what you're creating, information is actionable. Data is just, you can present it in multiple ways, right? But
Right.
once you get it into a point where it's understandable and you can make decisions and take actions off of the information that's being presented, then it's a much more powerful tool to have.
Right. And I don't think I would like to partner maybe with with a technology core to a certain degree. They don't implement, you never find someone in the big cores that knows everything. All right. They know the piece of whatever they're putting in. They know the fraud piece. They know the application and so forth. They don't help the bank iron out all the things to have that smooth customer experience. All right. I'd like to do that for them to show them that this is what you need. You want to hire new people to do it, fine. But this is what has to get done because we know where to plug everything in. And that's the difference, no matter who the bank is using. I'd like to get a hold of some of their banks to help them iron out the customer experience. The constraint is for us is just getting our name out there. A lot is word of mouth and so forth. And I think the bigger constraint is it's a long sales cycle. It's a really long sales cycle because the CEOs are lukewarm. They call you in and then well, it's too expensive. But they don't see that that expense, that ROI is going to be in the first year that you operate, it's paid itself back.
Yeah.
Right? It's just paid itself back. And I know when we opened branches at Citibank, we used to look for a 3-year payback and get to a certain level of 50, 60, 70 million dollars. I mean, in a
With
place
a
like
10-year lease on the property as well, right?
right, exactly. Right. Um, so I don't think that they understand it that well. And getting the word out to them, I think it has to happen for us. We need to get to places where they can see that and understand it. Because I do explain to a lot of CEOs the difference between having a really busy street corner with 100,000 cars or people walking by every day is the same as us putting a display ad out to 100,000 or, 100,000, computers and IP addresses every day that we can change by the minute if they're working or not working. You can never change your street corner,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
Um,
with that, Jen, thanks for coming on the Growth Mandate. I really appreciate you bringing not only your experience and energy today, a lot of energy, but leaving us with many things to think about. I think we've covered a broad range of topics, very relevant. I think you'll leave a lot of the listeners with something to think about, or especially on the insight side. So thank you very much for being here. Very much.
Thank you. This is my pleasure. Thanks.